Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaranari. Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaranari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaranari. Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaranari. Soranandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jai Vishpad Paramahansa Prabhupada Asadasa Shishima. His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Manantakota Vaishnavani Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Prem Sri Gaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakun, Radhakun, Giti Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Navadam Ki Jai, Shri Maya Punavidam Ki Jai, Gangamaya Ki Jai, Jamunamaya Ki Jai, Tosadevi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Chansana Bhakti Distribution Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Go Premanandi, all glorious some devotees, all glorious some devotees, all glorious some devotees, all glorious Shri Guru, Shri Guru. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 29, Texts 18, 19, and 20. And we'll chant 18 together. Deho Ratas Tvindriyashvaha Samvatsara Nrayo Gati Dvij Karma Chakras Triguna Dvaja Panchasu Bandhara Deho Ratasvindriyashvaha Sanvaksharavayogatihi Dvikama Chakrastri Guna Dvajha Panchasu Bandharaha Deho Ratasvindriyashvaha Sanvaksharavayogatihi Dvikama Chakrastri Guna Dvaja Panchasu Bandharaha Deoratas Vindriyashvaha Sangvaksharavayogitihi Dvikara Chakrastri Guna Dvaja Panchasu Bandharaha Deoratas Vindriyashvaha Sangvaksharagato Dvikara Chakrastri Guna Vajapanchasu Bandharaha Dherotas Vindriyashva Hanvaksarayogitihi Dvikara Chakrastri Guna Vajapanchasu Bandharaha Dherotas Vindriyashva Samvatsarvayogitihi Dvikama Chakrastri Guna Vajapanchasu Bandharaha Dehoratas Vindriyashva Samvatsarvayogitihi Dvikama Chakrastri Guna Vajapanchasu Bandharaha. I'll read the other two now. Mado Rasmir Buddhi Suto Rindidho Vandaku Baraha Panchen Pachendriyarta Pak Jaipa Saptadatu Barut Kaha Akutir Vikramo Bahyo Mriga Trisnam Pradhavati Ekade Dashen Dvya Chamuhu Panchasuna Vinodakrit Deha Body Rata Chariot 2 but Indriya the knowledge acquiring senses Ashvaha the horses Samvatsara total years Raya duration of life Agatihi without advancing 3 2 karma activities chakra wheels 3 guna modes of nature dvajaha flags pancha 5 asu life heirs bandharaha bondage manaha the mind rasmi rope buddhi intelligence sutaha chariot driver hrit heart nidaha sitting place dvandva duality kubaraha the post for the harness pancha 5 indriya artha sense objects prakshepaha weapons shapta 7 dhatu elements arutakaha coverings akrutihi attempts of the 5 working senses vikramaha prowess or processes bhayaha external mrigatrisnam false aspiration pradhavati runs after ekadasha 11 indriya senses chamahu soldiers pancha 5 suna envy vinod pleasure krit doing translation and purport By His divine grace. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Narada Muni continued, what I referred to as the chariot was in actuality the body. The senses are the horses that pull that chariot. As time passes, year after year, these horses run without obstruction. But in fact, they make no progress. Pious and impious activities are the two wheels of the chariot. The three modes of material nature are the chariot's flags. The 5 types of air, or life air, constitute the living entity's bondage, and the mind is considered to be the rope. Intelligence is the chariot driver, the heart is the sitting place in the chariot, and the dualities of life, such as pleasure and pain, are the knotting place. These 7 elements are the coverings of the chariot, and the working senses are the 5 external processes. I think someone's trying to get him. The 11 senses are the soldiers being engrossed in sense enjoyment. The living entity seated on the chariot hankers after fulfillment of his false desires and runs after sense enjoyment, life after life. This is amazing. This is an amazing verse. 3 verses. Purport. The entanglement of the living entity in sense enjoyment is very nicely explained in these verses. The word samvatsara, meaning the progress of time, is significant. Day after day, week after week, fortnight after fortnight, month after month, year after year, the living entity becomes entangled in the chariot's progress. The chariot rests on 2 wheels, which are pious and impious activities. The living entity attains a certain position in life in a particular type of body according to his pious and impious activities. But his transmigration into different bodies should not be taken as progress. The real progress is explained in Bhagavad Gita 4:9. Chaktva dehang punar janma naiti. One makes real progress when he does not have to take on another material body, as stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 19:138. Aitha brahmanda bhari ananta jivagan chorasi raksha yonite karaye brahmana. The living entity is wandering throughout the entire universe and taking birth in different species on different planets. Thus he moves up and down. But that is not real progress. Real progress is getting out of this material world altogether, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Abrahma bhuvana loka punaravartinorjana mopetyat konteya punarjanmana vidyate. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. Even if one is promoted to Brahmaloka, the highest planet in the universe, he has to come down again to the lower planetary systems. Thus he is wandering up and down perpetually under the influence of the 3 modes of material nature, being illusioned. He thinks he is making progress. He is like an airplane circling the earth day and night, incapable of leaving the earth's gravitational field. Factually, there is no progress because the airplane is conditioned by the earth's gravity. Just as a king is seated on a chariot, the living entity is seated in the body. The sitting place is the heart, and the living entity sits there and engages in the struggle for existence, which goes on without progress perpetually. In the words of Narottam Das Thakur, Karmakanda Gyanakanda Kevala Vishirabandha Amrita Baliya Yebha Kaya Nana Yoni Sada Pire Kadharya Bhakshana Kare Dhara Janma Adha Pate Yaya. The living entity struggles very hard due to the influence of fruitive activity and mental speculation, and simply gets a different type of body life after life. He eats all kinds of nonsense and is condemned by his activities of sense enjoyment. If one really wants to progress in life, he must give up the ways of karma kanda and jnana kanda, fruit of activities and mental speculation. Being fixed in Krishna consciousness, one can become free from the entanglement of birth and death and the vain struggle for existence. In these verses, the words Mriga Trishnam, Pradhavati are very significant because the living entity is influenced by a thirst for sense enjoyment. He is like a deer that goes to the desert to search out water. In a desert, an animal simply searches in vain for water. Of course, there is no water in the desert, and the animal simply sacrifices his life in an attempt to find it. Everyone is planning for future happiness, thinking that somehow or other, if he can reach a certain point, he will be happy. In actuality, however, when he comes to that point, he sees that there is no happiness. He then plans to go further and further to another point. This is called Mrigatrishna, and its basis is sense enjoyment in this material world. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksham Malitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Mukram Krotavachalam Pangun Manghayate Gurim Yat Kripa Taraham Bande Shigurum Dinataranam Vanchikalpatubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vachapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaisnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This example is one of the most amazing examples in the Vedic literatures. I think it's also the Katha Upanishad. In the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada mentions that in the purport of this Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pamati balavadunam, where Arjuna, he says that the mind is chanchalam, it's flickering. Pamati, it's mad. Balavad, strong. Dridam, determined. To control it is more difficult than to control the wind. So of course we had some, I think it was Bharadwaj, she did that painting of the 5 horses and the senses. I show that to people when I distribute the Gita, and many people get the Bhagavad Gita just because of that picture. It's amazing. And it really spells out the whole situation. The senses are pulling the living entity, the sight, want to see, the man wants to see the form of the woman wants to see the form of the man, wants to see things, see so many material things being pulled. Like pornography is probably the biggest thing on the internet. I want to see the form, these material forms, and from that comes so many sinful desires and sinful activities. So sight, want to hear so many things. It's like now the music is like they have this something called metal rock. Metal rock. It's like, I mean, the lyrics in these, sometimes I stop at a street light or something, and they're blaring, these boom boxes, and the lyrics are just like, it's inconceivable how people can, it's just, you could see Kali Yuga is just increasing, like anything. People want to hear this music, so-called music. And then the sense of taste. They want to taste so many things. Obesity is a big problem in America. They want to eat more and more and more and more. In France, they used to have this thing that they would feast, and there would be a vomit room. They would feast, and they wanted to eat more, so they would go and they would vomit forcefully. They would vomit, and they go eat more. Romans also. So people just out of control tongue, and also speaking so much prajalpa, so much nonsense. Yeah. So this pulls, they live in entity. Yeah. The sight, also the smell. I want to smell so many things. People like alcoholics, they like the smell of alcohol. What a horrible smell. And then touch. Want to touch. The man wants to touch the woman's body. Yeah. Out of control. Out of control. Just like in America here, about every year, approximately 100,000 women are raped. Yeah, every year. It's insane. People just lose control. They lose control, and then they engage in so many sinful activities, and thus they have to get so many reactions. Yeah, so many reactions. The main one, let's go into another body. They think they're progressing, as Prabhupada says. They're not going anywhere, just going with one body after another, after another, after another. And they don't know what kind of body they're going to get. Just like at night, we go to sleep. And we wake up, and we're in our body. Bhakti Glenn, you say, I'm Bhakti Glenn, I have a mother, a father, and I'm from the Philippines, but then when the body dies, then we wake up in another body. Hopefully, actually, the plan is, the desire is, for the devotees, is that we wake up and we're in some place where Krishna's performing his pastimes in the material world. Krishna's got his Prabhupada said, his road show. Goes around different universes. So when we become pure, we go to that place where Krishna's performing his pastimes, and we get trained up. Imagine that, you wake up and you're in Vrindavan. You're there, and Krishna's there, and Krishna's friends and family and friends and spiritual world. And then we go back to Goloka Vrindavan. This is the goal. But most people, because of so many central activities, they wake up in an ant body, or a rat body, or a tiger body, or a bear body, or a bird body. They don't know. They haven't a clue where they're going to go at the end of this life. And they're just continuing on in this no progress journey, going nowhere. It's like sometimes you see these people, they're working out. They have these things they run on. You're running, but you're not going anywhere. Treadmill. So people are going here and there, but they're actually not going anywhere. They're just on this samsara, this cycle of birth and death, going nowhere, just suffering, birth, death, old age, and disease. So actually the human form of life is a golden opportunity. It's a golden opportunity to get out of this cycle of samsara. But people aren't aware. They think, no, life is to enjoy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But it's such an unfortunate waste of the human form of life. So, of course, we're trying to help them understand this life is temporary, and we're going to continue on at the end of this life according to our karma. Karmana daiva netrena, according to our own activities and according to the sanction of Krishna, everybody gets a certain result. And Krishna, he's a very good manager. He knows what he's doing. Yeah. And therefore he does a lot of delegation. Yeah. Just like Brahma, he does the creation. Vishnu, he does the maintenance, most difficult part. And then Lord Shiva, he does the destruction. But everybody gets exactly what they want. Lord Vishnu, Paramatma, he's in the heart. And he knows everything that everybody is doing, even our thoughts. Everything is calculated. Yeah. And then at the end of our life, then we get a certain result. Of course, the devotee tries to cultivate his Krishna consciousness, and therefore a big part of advancing in spiritual life is we have to control the mind, we have to train the mind. Just like dogs can be trained, right? Some dogs are trained pretty well. Yeah. So the mind is like that. The mind has to be trained. Yato yato nischalati manaschanchalam astiram tatastato nyam yaitat atmani someday. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must bring it back under the control of the self. Got to keep on bringing it back. It's not easy, but Krishna says, "Samsayam mahabaho manordar nagraham chal abhyasena kontaya vairagena chikriyate." That with practice and detachment, it's possible. Now, I understand that by practice, it's like anything, you practice something, you get better at it. Yeah. But detachment, I was trying to figure out, what is that detachment? How can we control the mind by detachment? Well, Krishna says, Evam Buddhe Parang Buddhva Samsubhyatmanam Atmana. That knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, intelligence, which it steady oneself. By carefully engaging in Krishna consciousness and slay this formidable enemy known as lust. So, this detachment is we're not the mind. I had an interesting experience 2 days ago. I was speaking to one gentleman at La Jolla, and I showed this picture of the five senses in the mind, and he said, "Yes, we're not the mind." First time I ever heard that. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. Well, he understood that we were the soul. He was a thoughtful person. So he said, if everybody thought that they were their mind, which is pretty much the situation, it'd be a terrible world. And therefore we have a terrible world. People are just led by their mind, their senses, their contaminated intelligence. Yeah. So, we have to cultivate this understanding that we are the soul within. We're not the mind, we're not the intelligence, we're not the senses. Now, in chapter 16, in the translation, it said that there's also two powerful weapons, explosive weapons, it said. And those two explosive weapons is, one, the misunderstanding that we're the body. And two, that everything in relation to this body is mine. These are two explosive weapons. Interesting, huh? Because by this misunderstanding that we're the body, the whole world of Maya opens up. Because you want to enjoy your senses in whatever way possible. Thinking we're the body. And thinking that everything that's in relation to this body is mine. And I, me, and mine. So these are explosive weapons. Interesting. So, but by practicing Krishna consciousness, we close this book of Maya, and we open Krishna book. We open our life with Krishna. We give up this material life. And Krishna consciousness is so attractive that it's possible. So many thousands and thousands of devotees have have turned away from Maya and gone towards Krishna. So this is the power of Krishna consciousness, to give up these sinful activities. Very difficult. But if something is higher, then it's possible. And Krishna's the highest. So we have to somehow become attracted to Krishna and to devotional service, and understand our spiritual nature, the soul. And then we can engage in something called sadachar. Sadachar means purified activities. It's like I mentioned the other day, that by sinful desire and by sinful activities we experience distress. Yeah? It's in the Nectar of Devotion. So by pure desire and pure activity we experience happiness. Everybody wants happiness, so this is how to attain happiness. Pure desire. So how do we achieve these pure desires? We have to want them. To want pure desires. We have to want pure activities. And pure activities means acting for the pleasure of Krishna, not acting just for the pleasure of this body. So eventually we want to engage in Tivra Bhakti, intense desire. It's stated in the Vedas, Krishna Bhakti Prasabhavitamati Kriyamtam Yadikatopi Tatra Loyam Apimoyam Janma Koti Sukhatarni Alabite. That one cannot achieve Krishna consciousness or pure devotional service by engaging in pious activities for many millions of lives. But one can achieve it by paying one price. It's like if you want to get something valuable, then you pay a price. You got to pay a price for something valuable. So there's only one price we have to pay, and that is intense desire, Tivra Bhakti, intense desire to please Krishna. This is the price. If you want to get the highest thing, we have to pay the highest price. Complete detachment from this world and intense desire to serve Krishna, to please Krishna. And then we'll experience this, the ultimate happiness. And the ultimate happiness is this is pure devotional service. So I wanted to read something from Bilvamangala Thakur. I read yesterday. It's just so beautiful. Lord Chaitanya was very fond of hearing Bilvamangala Thakur from his writings. He says, I offer pranam to that foremost of thieves who was famous in Vraj as the butter thief, and who, for those who take shelter of him, steals the sins that have accrued over many lifetimes. I offer pranams to the foremost of thieves who steals Srimati Radhika's heart, who steals the dark luster of a fresh rain cloud, and who steals all the sins and sufferings of those who take shelter of his feet. Wouldn't it be nice? Huh? All of our sinful desires taken away. Krishna can steal them. If we surrender to him, he'll take them away. Yeah? He turns his surrendered devotees into paupers and wandering, homeless beggars. Oh, such a fearsome thief has never been seen or heard of in all the three worlds. Mere utterance of his name purges one of a mountain of sins. Such an astonishingly wonderful thief I have never seen or heard of anywhere. O thief, having stolen my wealth, my honor, my senses, my life, and my everything, where can you run to? I have caught you with the rope of my devotion. You cut the terrible noose of Yamaraj. You sever the dreadful noose of material existence, and you slash everyone's material bondage. But you are unable to cut the knot fastened by your own loving devotees. It's deep, huh? I'm going to read that one again. Huh? Yeah, well, I found this in the Bhakti Godhead. Is it? Oh. In Bengal, it's a famous song. In Vrindavan. Oh. You cut the terrible noose of Yamaraj, you sever the dreadful noose of material existence, and you slash everyone's material bondage, but you are unable to cut the knot fastened by your own loving devotees. O stealer of my everything, O thief, today I have imprisoned you in the miserable prison of my heart, which is very fearful due to the terrible darkness of my ignorance. There, for a long time, you will remain receiving appropriate punishment for your crimes of thievery. I'm going to read that one again too. O stealer of my everything, O thief, today I have imprisoned you in the miserable prison of my heart, which is very fearful due to the terrible darkness of my ignorance. There, for a long time, you will remain receiving appropriate punishment for your crimes of thievery. Amazing, huh? Bilva Thakur. O Krishna, thief of my everything, the noose of my devotion remaining forever tight, you will continue to reside in the prison of my heart, because I will not release you for millions of eons. So a devotee, although Krishna, he's Ajita, he's unconquerable. A devotee, by his devotion, conquers Krishna. So therefore, devotional service is even more powerful than Krishna, because he's conquered by this devotion. So this is what we're aspiring for, this devotion for Krishna. Either we have devotion for sense gratification, which keeps us bound to this material existence. Someone's trying to come in. Or we can have devotion for Krishna. And by this devotion for Krishna, we'll experience so much happiness. Everybody wants an ocean of happiness, right? An unlimited ocean of happiness. But this world, there's no happiness. I remember before I joined this movement, I was thinking, I grew up in LA, and I was thinking, people aren't happy here. Just got that, Krishna gave it that realization, there's no happiness here in this world. So then I started, that's where my journey pretty much started. I started reading books on philosophy and yoga. But yeah, it's so much misery in this world. Now we have this pandemic, and so it's not a nice place, the material world. But there is a nice place, and that's the spiritual world. So we should make all arrangements to surrender to Krishna, do whatever we can to please Krishna, to get the favorable glance of Krishna. As Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, he said, don't try to see God, but act in such a way that God, He wants to see you. And of course we know that what is very pleasing to Krishna is this spreading the message of Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, spreading this divine message to others. This is what is most pleasing, and he says, Nacha tasman manusheshu kashid me priyakritama. There's no one more dear to me than that person who is distributing this message. So this is a quick way to please Krishna. This is Krishna's soft spot. You know, everybody has a soft spot. Like some devotees really like the curd samosas. I don't know if anybody doesn't like curd samosas. Everybody does. So it's everyone's soft spot. You give someone some curd samosas, whoa, and some gulab jamans or something. Soft spot. My soft spot there. So Krishna has a soft spot because Krishna doesn't like to see his parts and parcels suffering. So if we go out of our way to help others, then he's very pleased. He's very pleased. Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned that in Krishna he has living entities that he delegates to do certain activities in this world. But Krishna is so kind that he also comes here to help us. He speaks the Bhagavad Gita. He's such a good preacher. 5,000 years after he speaks it, it's still being studied in universities all around the world. Big scholars are trying to understand the deep meaning of the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. When Krishna speaks, it's a powerful message. Yeah. And now, 5,000 years later, so many people are inspired by the words of Krishna. And that brings me to something I want to share with you. It's a book distribution pastime that I think all of you will appreciate. Would you like?
No.
Okay, this is from my book, the Brihat Mridanga. For those of you who know this devotee, you know she's a saint. She's practically like our Queen Kunti of ISKCON, Mother Nidra. She is such a saint. So this is her contribution in the book. She says, when seeds are sown, they take time to grow into plants. There need to be watering, cultivating, weeding. In time the plants flourish. When we look at the big picture, we see that many bhakti plants have sprouted, though they may not be in our own backyard. Actually, most who have joined are not living in temple ashrams. They're living all over the world in all kinds of situations. Many more are joining now than ever before. We have to be more broad-minded about what joining really is. In my own case, I was practicing some Krishna consciousness since the early 1970s. I was somewhat of a closet devotee, since many of my friends and family members did not really know what I was doing. She was a teacher in Canada at this time. Then in 1976 I moved into the temple. Many felt that I had not joined until I moved in, but in my heart and in my practices, I had already started my Krishna consciousness and had accepted Srila Prabhupada as my spiritual master several years before moving into an ashram. So there are many people who have joined us, but we may not recognize them. But Srila Prabhupada and Krishna surely recognize them, and hopefully in the future will be more able as a movement to connect with so many who are joining. Contact Sankirtan. Somehow we have to get it going. We're still lagging way behind. there's one devotee, he was a Mormon before joining our Hare Krishna movement. And he said, we're really good at getting the message out, but bringing people in, we're terrible. The Mormons, they focused on making Mormons. Not so much on getting the message out, but actually making them. And they're good at it. They're one of the fastest growing religions in the world. Mormon. So somehow we have to increase in our helping people come. In 1972, a devotee approached a man passing through the St. Louis airport and distributed Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita to him. He took it home and put it on his bookshelf. There it sat for 10 years. In 1982, his wife was pregnant and wanted to do something interesting to pass the time. She saw the Bhagavad Gita on the shelf and thought it would be interesting to read the whole book. She did. And it made her whole life interesting. She told her husband how interesting it was, and he also started reading it. Then he decided they should visit the local ISKCON temple, which they began visiting regularly. Eventually, the man's job sent him to Boise, Idaho. There, the couple became more involved in Krishna consciousness, but there was no temple. So they decided to start their own. They became initiated and received the names Anantarupa Das and Aruta Devi Dasi. She homeschooled her 2 children by mainly teaching them from Srila Prabhupada's books. One of them graduated with a PhD in religion from Oxford University at the age of 22. Both of them have. And is now teaching at a university. The other is also at Oxford University, also studying religion. Both of them are initiated and are engaged in the service of Krishna. By Anantarupa's and his wife's preaching, many people in Boise have become devotees and are now living on the same street as the temple. All of this because of one book that was patiently waiting on a bookshelf for 10 years before the time bomb went off and transformed so many lives. So this is the power of Srila Prabhupada's books. There's another instance of I don't know if I said this one here, but anyway, it's a nice story. There was one man, he was going through some tremendous pain, and he was going to commit suicide. But on his bookshelf was the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. So he thought, well, I have nothing to lose now anyway, so he pulled it down, he started reading it. And he told this devotee who he's telling this to, that is just reading the first paragraph, I felt so much relief. The first paragraph. He said, I just kept reading. And when I finished reading it, then I felt so happy. Yeah. He became a devotee. And sat there for who knows how many years. So this is happening. We just got to get these books out. Just get these seeds out. These seeds of knowledge by which people can learn so much and grow so much in their spiritual lives. So, is there any question or comment? Yes, thank you, Maharaj.
Just to double down on the suicide, Rupanuga Prabhu in Los Angeles, in Laguna Beach, they do Motel Gita. So he went to one motel owner, tried to encourage him to take Bhagavad Gita. Nah, so all right. So he said, oh, can I just leave one copy? Or just, all right, put it on the desk. So he put one copy on Bhagavad Gita and Rupanuga left. About 4 days later, the guy called back and said, look, I want 4 cases. Rupanuga said, sure, but why? The guy told the story. The story is that, I don't know the time span, a day, 2 days later, something like that. Somebody was checking in the motel at night, very grumpy, very agitated. Give me a room. Here's the menu. And saw the Gita. Said, "Can I take this?" Says, "Yeah, go ahead, take it." It's just, I don't even know where it came from. They didn't know. So the desk clerk, "Yeah, go ahead and take it." So he took it. Next morning, when the guy checked out, completely changed. He said, "Look, I'm sorry I was so, abrupt with you. I really, whatever." And he had the Gita under his arm. He said, "Can I take this?" She said, "Sure." She said, "But what happened? You really changed." Turns out the guy checked into the hotel to commit suicide, which, according to Bhaktivatsal, people do this quite often, interestingly enough. So the guy checked into the motel to commit suicide. He shut the windows, blew out the pilot light, and turned on the gas, the heater. And he thought, well, I don't want to change my mind, so I better read something. That's why he took the Gita. He said, well, it'll take me 10, 15 minutes to pass out, and I don't want to change my mind. So I don't want to think about all my issues. I'll just read this book. So as he was reading the Gita, he said, wait a minute. He said, I'm not crazy. This world. And he, shut off the light, shut off the gas, opened up the windows, and spent the rest of the night reading Bhagavad Gita. So that was the motel owner said, look, I don't want people dying in my... I'm going to put a Gita in every single room. I had a personal experience. This was about, about 10 years ago. We were doing the, whatever you call it, Civic Center, doing a concert at the Civic Center. And I went up to a van. There was a guy sitting in the van, a beard, long hair. So I said, hey, rolled up his window. His windows were rolled up. And he said, move on. I said, okay. But somehow or other, I had somebody, how somebody's already giving money. So you've got a little cushion there. So I took a path of perfection and I put it on his windshield. He wouldn't roll down his window. So I took up the windshield wiper, slipped it, say, hey, yeah, check it out. He goes, hey, yeah. Got back to the temple. The next day, he came into the temple and moved in. His name was Danny McCutcheon.
Wow.
Now he's an initiated devotee. I don't want to mention his name. He's an initiated devotee. But what happened is that he was in the van with a hose coming in the back door. He was filling up the van with carbon monoxide to kill himself from the exhaust from his car. And that's why he didn't want to roll down the window. But same thing. He thought, well, I might as well read something. I don't want to change my mind. He rolled down the window, took the book, rolled it back up, and was reading it as he was preparing to die. So, there's a lot. I've got 3 or 4 stories more about suicides. But my question was this. My question was, in the Bilva Mangal Thakur prayer, it was saying that Krishna steals away our desires, the sinful desires of one who surrenders unto him. That seems like kind of a conundrum or a endless loop. I want to surrender, but I've got sinful desires. But Krishna won't free my sinful desires until I surrender. But I can't surrender because I've got the sinful desires. So which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Or, how do I surrender if I've got the material desires? And how do I get Krishna, if I've already surrendered to Krishna, then that means I must not have material desires. So how does it work? Do I have to wait?
I think this is his humility. He's surrendered to Krishna, but a surrendered devotee thinks, well, I'm so sinful. So I think this is the humility of a devotee. And Javita would like to say something as well.
I think that...
It's on.
I think that is exactly what I was going to comment on, because you quoted from the 6th chapter about Arjuna saying the mind is so fickle, it's impossible to control it. And Krishna says, yes, it's difficult to control, but the restless mind, but it's possible by suitable practice and by detachment. But that's precisely what I don't have, the detachment. The mind is here. But in the purport, Prabhupada explains that in the process of Krishna consciousness, as taught by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there's no prerequisite. In other words, don't worry, you can come with all your attachments and everything, but chant Hare Krishna. Just join us here, take the glubjaments. You know what I mean? In other words, I'm not going to be detached from that. So that brings you into the community of devotees. And then if you practice the chanting, then you're thinking of Krishna. And he's taking away, even though you're not completely pure. And that, if you continue to do the process, then you have kind of a foothold in that detachment, and you're because you're becoming attached to Krishna. Whereas the yoga process is, all right, go out to the forest, sit alone, and fight with that mind, and be detached, and you can't have this, no sex. So that's what Arjuna is saying now. There's no way I can do that. So of course this.
You would say that in other processes, it requires the qualification before getting the relief and the mercy and realization. But by bhakti, as exemplified or taught by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you just begin.
Exactly.
And it's an evolutionary process. It's not a first A, then B. One washes away the other. As you practice, you become more surrendered, the desires fade. So it's the intervention of Chaitanya
It's described.
mercy.
It's described right in the purport to that verse that I just read, right after Chanchalam. And Prabhupada mentions like that. So that Krishna demanded surrender, and then I'll protect you. But Lord Chaitanya has no demand like that. He's this is a more merciful incarnation of Krishna. Just chant, dance, take prasad. Where's the surrender? Just come into the storefront.
Yeah.
So that's the way in which we become detached, and I think we can all experience that. You know that someone.
I got here. Worked for me.
I mean, once you start, coming and you have to at least spend some time trying to chant, But in this case, yeah, and the books are also so powerful. You can see in these stories how someone who takes the time to read those books, that's surrender. You're surrendering your mind for that time, and it's purifying you enough to at least get a foothold and go to the temple and proceed.
Thank you.
I was just thinking.
It's on.
We shut this off.
It's on.
Okay. So you were saying how just begin the process. So I was thinking again about our Nrsimha Krishna, who's the president of our yatra in Turkey, and he was a Muslim businessman. I mean, a young businessman. He works for a Danish company, and whatever. But he said reading Prabhupada's books was so painful. Because he said he thought he was a good Muslim. He thought everything was fine. He was a religious man. He was a good Muslim. He said every time he read Prabhupada's books, everything, like those pop-up books, you open it up and a picture pops up. He said every time he opened Prabhupada's books, it was like somebody punched him in the nose. Because, he was eating meat, he smoked cigarettes, he wasn't drinking, but, everything else. And he would read Prabhupada's books, and he would Prabhupada would just punch him in the nose. That you think you're religious, but bang, bang, And he said, but it was so sweet simultaneously. It was almost like, like too hot to handle, but too sweet to resist. So he'd say, okay, I'm going to get pummeled. And he'd open the book, read about a page or two, get punched in the nose. It's too much. But he worked his way. It was Krishna book, actually. He said he worked his way through Krishna book, worked his way through Bhagavad Gita. But so that same thing, he had a little confidence, there must be something here. And he was by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, he was getting a taste, even though he wasn't really qualified, but he became qualified. And now we have a beautiful, it's a whole story.
Wow.
From one book. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy.
We have to pass here. Not online? It didn't work today, huh? Oh, okay. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki?
What's the reason, Tapas?
The internet is bad.
Why is the internet bad? Huh? There's nothing we can do.
Why don't we get a better cable company?